Okay, cool. I think it's working. Okay. All right, so as you know, I'm Christina, and I'm going to be conducting a counseling interview that follows a 5-stage framework. And so this interview is actually an assignment, and it's part of my intentional interviewing and counseling course, which is part of Durham College's social service worker program. So I'm just going to run through informed consent so we can talk about your participation. So I've invited you to participate in a one-on-one interview with me. It's obviously being videotaped. And I'm going to be watching the video after I make it. My instructor will watch it, and there's a good chance that some of my classmates will watch it as well. Okay, and I'm just going to talk to you about the risks involved. So the risks are minimal. It's really unlikely that you're going to be made to feel uncomfortable or any harm will come to you. However, that being said, if you do feel uncomfortable and you want to stop for any reason, just let me know and we can stop. Benefits. It's unlikely there will be any direct benefit for you. However, this is going to help me to build my attending and counseling skills. It's basically just practice for me for my future career in social work. So that's a benefit that we're going to encounter.
Future benefits to other people.
Exactly. So you can feel good about that. Okay. Your participation is completely voluntary. If for any reason you want to stop, you just let me know, we'll stop. If you want the video to be destroyed, we can destroy it. That's completely your choice. If you choose to stop, no consequences to you. And like I mentioned before, if there's a question that you don't want to answer, that's fine, just let me know. But we can still continue with the interview after that. Okay, and then let's just move on to confidentiality. So I'll just ask you, I guess, what your understanding of confidentiality is.
I guess that whatever happens and is said here stays between me and you and the people that you mentioned before.
Exactly. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
So our discussion will stay within the confines of my course. So like I mentioned, my instructor, me, my classmates will all know what was said and the information you provide me. But I'm bound by confidentiality in that I can't talk about our discussion or release your information to like family members or close friends or anybody like that. So that will stick. However, there are 4 situations which I would be required to break confidentiality. I'll outline those now, but it's very unlikely that these will come up. So the first situation is if I were to, I guess, suspect that you were in any immediate danger, or anyone close to you might be in any immediate danger. So if you mentioned, let's say, ideations of suicide, something like that, I would be required to take the best course of action and help you in that way. So that would maybe look like me escorting you to a hospital, and I would have to tell your doctor or your nurses, well, I'm her counselor, and there I've broken confidentiality. The next situation pertains to legal matters. So if the courts subpoena client records, that sort of thing, I'm required to provide those records. The next situation involves children, so that's anybody under the age of 16. If you mention through our discussions that a child is being harmed in some way, I'm required to report that, and the authorities will deal with it as they see fit, depending on the situation. And then the last situation where I would be required to break confidentiality is if a regulated healthcare professional is sexually abusing somebody, you or somebody that you know, that you've reported to me. I'm legally required to report that. So, based on all that information that I've given you, would you like to proceed with this interview?
Sure.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so I guess we'll just start by asking you what you want to talk about today.
Well, I've been separated from my spouse for a couple of years, but I'm proceeding to actually divorce him, I guess.
Okay.
And so that in and of itself is like, I mean, the breakup isn't fresh, so it doesn't feel like the immediate
Right.
whatever, but there's a lot of other sort of, I guess, more complicated things that I'm trying to work through in the process of actually getting divorced. And our relationship isn't good, so there have been kind of distressing things that have happened in the process of trying to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically that's where I'm at.
Okay, so when you say that you're sort of encountering some complicated things and some distressing things, what exactly does that mean?
Well, I mean, I think, like, obviously when we broke up, we were both hurt, but I think he was a bit blindsided by it.
Okay.
And was really not expecting it, and so his hurt has taken on, it seems, like, I don't know, you have to ask him to really get the gist of it, but it seems like his hurt is a lot more bitter. And so one of the things that's happening is that I have a bunch of stuff in our former residence that I know he still lives at, and I believe he still has, that he's like withholding.
Okay.
Because of
those feelings.
I assume bitterness.
Okay.
And I haven't had a positive message from him in a long time in any sort of way. I've had some neutral ones and some pretty unpleasant ones, so that's about it.
Okay.
And basically the end of the positive messages came when I cut him off financially, which was a couple of years after our separation.
Okay, and so what drove you to cut him off? What made you make that decision?
I just felt like it had been long enough, and I was asking, I wanted a clean break, so I was asking for my stuff, to arrange to get my stuff, and I was asking for all these things, and he was avoiding it and not dealing with it. And then he basically cleaned out my bank account at one point, and I was like, okay, no. And that's the point where I cut him off financially, and then after that, I didn't hear from him. I had been hearing from him regularly, like every 3 weeks maybe.
Okay.
And I got one kind of shitty message, and then I never got anything again for 5 or 6 months.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like, I mean, obviously I didn't want to be in that relationship anymore, but it's unpleasant to know that someone who you loved feels so bitter and angry and shitty at you.
Okay.
When you feel like you've given, like, I feel like I've given him, I wasn't maybe the nicest during the breakup, because I feel like most people become like a kind of bad version of themselves.
Sure.
But I also feel like I gave him a pretty good shake for the years afterwards, in that I supported him financially, I allowed him to get his shit together, all of that, and he just kind of
Right. So
is writing me off.
What I'm hearing is that after your relationship ended, you were supportive, even though you went through some trying times, but he never reciprocated that support. He's actually been pretty, as you said, bitter, and doing some things, maybe holding on to some items of yours out of spite.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I feel that way. Like, I think for me, a lot of the reason why the relationship fell apart is because of, like, tangible things. Like, oh, you lied to me about this thing that's important, that has an impact on, like, my finances, my future, all of these things. That's important to me. He is angry about, like, emotional stuff.
Okay.
Like, you said that you would love me forever, and you clearly don't.
Right.
And so it's really difficult to kind of reconcile
Sure.
these two like opposing.
Right. You have different things in mind.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, I mean, I feel really, like, obviously I do have, like, emotional feelings about him and all of that. But for me, I hit a point where it was like, I can't jeopardize all of these things going forward, like my ability to, like, take care of myself as as an adult for this, like, this emotional connection. And for him, it was inverted. It was how could you destroy the emotional connection based on this crap?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you made a decision that was practical and logical for you based on, what you need. And he didn't feel the same way.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so it's difficult to deal with that bitterness and like that kind of ill will.
Yeah.
I don't feel ill will for him. I feel like he's a good guy, and I married him with like all honesty going forward, and it was the best decision I could make at the time with the information that I had. And then almost 10 years down the road, things look different.
Right.
And yeah, for him, it's just that's not how the picture was, and so it's really really weird. But at this point, I mean, the big thing is I would like to get my stuff. Because obviously we're not gonna reconcile that, and I've just had to I'm in the process of accepting that we're never gonna be friendly. It's never gonna happen because he's too hurt.
Right.
And so yeah, that's obviously not what I wanted, but that's life, I guess.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you haven't really heard much from him recently, but before that, the messages you were getting, you said, were bitter. I'm curious about your last, I guess, interaction. What did that look like?
Our last interaction? Well, I wanted to do my taxes 2 years ago because I was a year behind, and so I was like, I'll just do the 2 years. And so I requested, because we were for 2015. We were still married, and so I needed some tax information from him to be able to go forward.
Right.
So I requested tax information at that point, which he refused to give me, just by not ever responding. He responded to the message, but he responded to the hello, how are you? And not to the actual content of it, which sort of I guess reflects the emotional, logical
it just brings you right back
divide.
to, yeah.
But yeah, so that was a thing, and then he never did. And I requested multiple times after that, and it was the same deal. It was just kind of ignored. And then this year, he decided to do his taxes.
Oh.
So he asked me, the last message I got from him was him requesting my tax information from 2015.
I see. Okay.
At which point I was like, yeah, you could also give me yours. And he was like, sure.
So it was probably an unpleasant interaction still, but at least you got what you
Yeah, it was
eventually.
productive. It was productive. It did burn me a little. I was like, oh man, really? Anyway. But that is the last interaction I had with him.
And the last time you maybe requested your stuff back from him, that was way in the past, and it was
it was just not responded
ignored.
to at all.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's probably one of the main goals, I guess, is you making a plan with him to get your things back.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I've got two options there. I've started sort of making this bad joke that I'm sure is just a coping mechanism that they're lost in a fire.
Oh.
Because I do feel like there's a distinct possibility I'll just never get them back.
Okay.
It's just not gonna happen. Because it's not like I have anything of value. It's all sentimental stuff, and
Yeah.
it's just my stuff I had.
Yeah.
So it's not like I can actually take any legal action. It wouldn't even be productive. It would end up costing more than anything. And I'm not bitter like that. It's just I would prefer to get it back. So that's one thing, is that maybe it will just never happen. The other one is somehow persuading him to respond to me at all when I kind of make these requests. And I don't know how you make someone talk to you who doesn't want it, right?
Yeah.
Especially because, I mean, obviously the distance is so substantial.
Right, he lives in...
Very far. He's back in Ontario, and we're in the territories.
Right. Okay. Maybe it's something to consider, not necessarily keeping him as part of the decision to go and get your stuff in whatever way you choose.
Yeah.
It's like you said, you can't make somebody suddenly decide that they want to help you if they never did in the first place.
Yeah, that's valid. I don't know what that would look like, because I don't have keys to the apartment or anything anymore, and It's in a city that is pretty far from where the rest of my family and support base are, people I would involve. So it would be a bit of a production to even get there, and then to be turned away at the gate would be pretty distressing. And also, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be that he would do it intentionally, but he often works like multiple days away. So if I couldn't sync up with his schedule, it would just end up being like a moot
lost
point
cause,
anyway.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of one of those things where like I do need his cooperation to some extent
Right.
for that. And I mean, to me, like that's the thing, is it's such a like small concession. It's like you got to be there and unlock the door. Like
Yeah.
that's what you have to do.
Right.
And then I'll take this, like, which I see as kind of this creepy museum of like your past love life, which I don't know why you would even want in your apartment anyway, away,
Yeah.
and then you can clean slate it. And also, I mean, it's quite a bit of stuff, so it's got to be taken up. And that's part of why I kind of suspect maybe he's already gotten rid of it, and that's why he's not dealing with it, which is another possibility. So anyway, all that is to say, it's like this weird, complicated problem that's just amplified by the emotional, like, kind of echo there. But
Right.
yeah.
So let's say that you never get his cooperation. What would you think, or how would you feel about not getting your possessions back?
There's a few things that make me sad.
Okay.
Like, actually make me sad. I had a small trunk that belonged to my dad that was there.
Okay.
I would really have liked that back. My family photo albums that I made when I was in high school are there. I would like to get that back.
Yeah. So high sentimental value items.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure there's other things. Out of like purely kind of annoying, all my textbooks from college that I've often thought, it would be really nice to have that book to refer to whatever random thing I'm doing.
Sure.
Are there. A desk my dad built me is there. So it's like there's things like that
Yeah.
are just like, I would really like to get them back,
Yeah.
which is why I haven't just given up on it. If
Right.
it was just like old clothes and whatever, who cares? But yeah, on that level, I would really like to get those back.
Yeah.
But if I don't, it's like, it's stuff. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
It's just, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, and also, the me not having my stuff back has been a hang up in me choosing to get divorced, because I've sort of felt like if I get him served with divorce papers, the likelihood that I'll never get that stuff back is higher. But because at this point it's been years of me trying to get it back, I've just sort of accepted that it probably doesn't have any bearing on anything. So I've started the process of getting a divorce. I've requested my marriage certificate and got a package on how you get a divorce in the territories and all of that. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So how does it make you feel to be pursuing a divorce now?
I think I'll be really relieved when it's over. It's kind of a little bit scary, because it's the big opening up of like, do you want to come after me for anything weird? Like, I don't have anything that he could take. Like, he can try. go for it. But it is still this like big opening of like, I want this from you, and you have the option to like accept it, contest it, or do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if he contests it, then he can like really put us into squabbling over nothing at a high legal cost
Right.
for a long time. And I'm just like, I don't think he would do that, but at this point I've been so surprised by some of the things that he's done that it's very difficult to know. So yeah, so that's kind of it. I'm just like rallying to start that process.
Right. So have you done much research in terms of like separation agreements?
Not really separation agreements, but because our situation is like relatively straightforward legally, where like we don't have children, we don't have shared property, it's really just like a dissolution of the union.
Right.
And we've been living separately for like 3.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It should be very straightforward. It should just be like pay the fee.
Right.
That said, again, if he chooses to contest it for whatever reason, we would have to go to court. I think it would probably be thrown out by what I've seen, like any contestation that he would do
Okay.
would be thrown out pretty quickly, because it is such a like basic
Right.
And we don't have, like, there's nothing to, like, squabble
Yeah,
about.
it's just, like you mentioned, your stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance that it would be thrown out immediately, but then that's still extra, like, lawyer fees. Plus, for me, it would be travel.
Right.
Because I can't